I've been aware of philanthropy, I guess, all of my life. I grew up in Flint, Michigan. And so C.S. Mott Foundation, Charles Joyce Mott Foundation, and Mr. Mott himself were bigger than life in my community, okay? To be honest about it, we all thought every community had a Mr. Mott, because you could see him walking downtown, and I had a chance as a kid with my parents to go to their home, so I understood a little bit about it. Not a lot, but I knew that generosity helped our community through community education, after-school programs, a children's hospital, all of those children's clinics, and all kinds of nonprofit organizations that got their start through Mr. Mott's generosity. So I was aware of it. I come from a family of service. My dad was a pastor, my mom a teacher and a principal. And so we believed in doing things that sort of contributed to society. And I was taught that I served as a missionary early in my career in West Africa. I came back and came into state government. I was in state government in the late 70s, early 80s. I actually ran for office once, but I was in a staff position. I worked in the Michigan Senate as a legislative assistant, and then later went into the executive branch and went in and worked in the Department of Commerce as the deputy director of their budget office. Had a chance to take a position back in Flint as budget director for the city of Flint in the mid-'80s. So I came back to Flint, latter half of the 80s, and so I came back to Flint because Flint was home for me, and I thought it was an opportunity to give back. Came back to Flint, spent 5 years as budget director for the city of Flint, and then left and came back to state government again. And through some mutual contact, someone suggested that I apply for a position at the C.S. Mott Foundation. At that point, C.S. Mott Foundation had not had a full program officer of color that had lasted. And so they brought in two of us together, and I think for the first time really set up an orientation process for us. And I was fortunate enough to have a really good senior member of the staff who became my coach and mentor for my first few years there. And so I came in at a time that they had decided to split out the Flint grant-making program into its own program, grant-making portfolio. They had always granted tons of money in Flint, but it came through various of the programs. And so they wanted to develop a grant-making portfolio and program that was Flint, Genesee County. So I came in to do that and started as one person. Everybody came and dumped all of the folders that they had of Flint on my desk. And so I grew the team to about 5 and worked for 9 years in that, doing that work. And, you are not a favorite child when you do local grant making. You do everything from get accosted in the grocery store, wanting resources, to being chastised for having turned down a grant proposal, and even having your spouse accosted for what you've done. But it was, I enjoyed the work. And that's the work I was doing. I was director of the Flint Area Grant-Making Program for C.S. Mott Foundation when I was offered this opportunity. And I just found it to be natural for me. I think we all bring our experience base to our work. Some of us are more conscious of that than others. And I think for most people of color, we are more conscious of our experience base and how that can help inform our work as well as sometimes hinder us or complicate our relationships with our colleagues. So I would say it has been both helpful and at times a curse. I am the daughter of a Baptist preacher, a very proactive pastor who was one of these who spoke out on issues locally and nationally and marched with Dr. King and did all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had grown up in a household where you didn't sit quietly if you saw an injustice. I mean, you weren't out of control. And one of the things I was always taught is there is a way to address it, mm-hmm. to be heard. Mm-hmm. And so at times that has been problematic for me, and at times people have looked to me for a better understanding. Yeah. And you have to learn to moderate it. And I'm old enough now to do that better than I did 20 or 30 years ago. You know, my dad, I remember, I'll tell you a story. My dad had I was dating a young man who was aspiring to be in the clergy. And having grown up in that household, that wasn't necessarily something I was that interested in continuing to be in. And but he went and met with my dad one day and said, I don't know what's with her. She's so radical. And my dad just chuckled and said to him, well, that's probably my fault. You know, it kind of took him back because he thought he would get some, a talk, my dad giving me a talk. And that wasn't what happened. But I think I always feel that if I'm having a discussion, and I've certainly had it in this administration, to sort of raise the sensitivity around policy issues and what does it mean. Mm-hmm. I had a conversation yesterday with Governing Magazine, which is partnering with AARP of Michigan around creating age-friendly communities. Mm-hmm. And the young lady who was chatting with me about it, because they wanted to engage more foundations in it, said to me, we're looking at Traverse City and we're looking at Grand Rapids. And she said, and I said, okay. I said, so then you are narrowing your focus on who it is you want to serve, I said to her. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, Traverse City and Grand Rapids tend to be two of our wealthier communities. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they don't have low-income seniors in those communities, but that's not the profile they have or want. So helping them be an age-friendly community would say to me that is helping mid to upper income individuals in those communities feel comfortable staying in those communities. Mm-hmm. I said, are you going to think about how you help people in Lansing? Oh, she said, well, we tried to reach out to Lansing and Flint, but we got nowhere. I said, that doesn't surprise me. I said, they're resource-strapped, under siege. Mm-hmm. But I said, that's the very problem. The seniors in those communities, mostly seniors of color, are under siege in their homes. Right. And they can't move or get out. They can't move to Traverse City or to Florida. So as you think about age-friendly communities, how do you help communities that are now struggling as a result of the lost manufacturing base and have these seniors who were okay when they were working, but retirement incomes have literally put them into poverty? People, when it comes to issues of poverty or color and the impact, they often haven't thought about it because that's not their experience base. And so one of the things that concerns me, even across the country, that the recent hearings in D.C. around Roe versus Wade, where the legislators wouldn't let the female speak. You remember that? Yeah. Well, there's often that lack of voice of the people of color or the people who are struggling with poverty when policy decisions are being made that directly impact their lives. And no one in those conversations has an experience base that can better inform the decision-making. And I just use that example because I think most women can relate to that. But that happens day after day relative to impacts on disenfranchised populations,